Hey everyone, and welcome to my Avengers Age of Ultron review. I guess you could call it a review. I don't really see myself as a film critic, so if you want to take this as a review, feel free, but I'm just sort of wanted to talk about the movie since I just saw it tonight, and I like talking about this sort of stuff, and I guess they are my impressions, so I guess it's kind of a review. I'm not going to give it a score. This is going to be spoiler-free for the first half, and then I'll give fair warning when I start to talk about spoilers. So whether you've seen it or not, there should be something in there for you. So the spoiler-free version is that I really liked it. And if it sounds like I'm surprised, it's because I kind of am. I came into it pretty pessimistically. I kind of thought or expected that this was going to be the Marvel movie that was the straw that breaks the camel's back. This was going to be the movie where I walked out going, okay, I've been oversaturated with Marvel movies. I don't really need any more. I never needed another Avengers. I'm sort of done with all this. And that seems to be the question on a lot of people's mind is when is this sort of trend of Marvel hits going to come to a halt? Because it's got to happen eventually. But I don't think this is it. I really, really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun action. It doesn't change up things too dramatically. You know, if you're looking for something that is a departure from the first Avengers, you're not really going to get it. But the first Avengers was great, and this sort of follows suit and is also great. And Joss is fantastic with ensemble casts, and he proves to be fantastic with this ensemble cast. I think a lot of characters that deserve more recognition get more recognition. And overall, it was just a really fun time. So the one thing that it did that I was almost certain this movie was not going to be able to pull off was that it got me excited for another Avengers movie. My best hopes was that I'd enjoy the movie but still be done with the Avengers, but I really kind of am excited for the next one now. Beyond that, I don't think there's a whole lot I can talk about besides just go see the movie. It was a lot of fun. It was a long movie. It was over 2 hours long, but it didn't feel like it, which just says something, because I feel like with movies like this, it could drag out very easily, but it was moving at a pretty good pace. The dialogue was great. The plot, I think, was better than the first one. And yeah, just fun time all around. So that was the short spoiler-free version. If you haven't seen the movie, go see the movie. If you haven't seen it yet, you probably want to turn off the video now because I'm going to talk about spoilers. And I think it's a good sign that most of this is going to be spoilers, because I think that means that there was enough in this movie worth talking about in depth that it requires talking spoilers. So you have been warned. Okay, let's get this out of the way. I think Joss Whedon handled the death of the main character, or I guess would you call him a main character? The death of the Avenger really well. So, I mean, that movie, super heavy-handed hints that Hawkeye's going to be the one to die, and it almost hints at it too much to the point where it just would have been too obvious. And while I was sitting through this movie, and all these hints, you know, he's talking with his family and he's pulling out the photo. It's just like so heavy-handed that I would have been really disappointed if Hawkeye died. Not because I liked Hawkeye as a character, although I like him more after this movie, but because I would have been so disappointed in Joss Whedon to fall into such a cliche to hint at it so heavily and then follow through. So really, I was hoping that there would be that reversal that we ended up getting with Quicksilver being the one who dies. And honestly, the only reason I wasn't sure it was going to happen was because I didn't know how Disney as a company was going to handle all of their characters. So I was very relieved when Quicksilver died. Even though I kind of liked him as a character and I wanted to see more of him as a character, I'm glad it wasn't Hawkeye biting the dust like it was hinted at for so much of that movie. Sort of to balance the pros with the cons, I was really worried going through this movie because the movie opens with this opening sequence of the Avengers fighting over in, I think it was like a fictional country where they were trying to get Loki's staff, and the CG in the opening sequence is really terrible. Like, and I'm usually not the first person to start harping on bad CG because, you know, I know that it's a very difficult thing to pull off, and you know, as long as I could suspend disbelief, I don't really care if CG is not that great. But the CG in this was really not that great. And what I realized thinking about it was that it wasn't because the detail of the CG was bad. It wasn't like it was crafted poorly. It was that the characters, especially Thor and Captain America, were doing things so unrealistic that there just wouldn't have been a way to animate it in a way that seemed realistic. It was just silly, the way they were hopping around. So, I was very nervous because I saw that and we were like, what, 2 minutes into the movie, and I'm thinking, am I about to witness like the first biggest Marvel, bomb? But then it got way better. All that stuff with Hawkeye, the way they fleshed out his character, I think was fantastic. I think it addressed a lot of the complaints of the Avengers, which is like, why is this dude with a bow and arrow part of the Avengers? Like, well, and it still doesn't really explain why, but at least it gives him enough depth as a character that you're glad he's part of the Avengers, or you don't mind that he's part of the Avengers. I think that they dealt with Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver in the best way they could. They sort of provided context for why they came from. It was a very short origin story, but it felt clinical. It felt like, yes, we were hearing the secondhand story of why. We weren't getting anything personal from them. And so I feel like they didn't develop as much. And I think throughout the movie, I felt that was a bad thing. I thought that was a criticism, but then towards the end, it was all justified, right? Because we're going to get more of the Scarlet Witch in future movies, and hopefully we'll get more characterization from her. And we don't really need to know more about Quicksilver because he's dead. And hopefully he stays dead, not because he was a bad character or a bad actor, but because the one thing that I think comics need to deal with is killing characters and keeping them dead, because that adds gravity to the situation. I thought Ultron was fantastic. I think some people complain because he's supposed to be like this cold, calculated AI that's killing, and he's like throwing jokes out there. But I think that sort of makes sense, right? Because he's supposed to be, one, he's created by Tony Stark, so that's sort of, it's logical that he'd be snarky. And two, the idea is he's learning from us, and we can be snarky, and so why wouldn't he learn part of that? So he was great. I like him better than Loki as a villain, and I think part of it was because he had a main mission, right? He had this goal of he wanted to eradicate humans to evolve what was left. Loki, I feel like it was just a very, while it was unique, I guess, it was just a typical power grab. I want to be super powerful, and I think the type of villain who has like this greater good mission in mind is much scarier than somebody who's just an egomaniac, because these are the people who I think are going to go crazy and actually do whatever it takes, including self-sacrifice. It involves that greater good, which I think is what made him a better villain and what made me like him as a villain more. I think it was interesting to point out that this movie was the anti-Man of Steel, and specifically that's in regards to Man of Steel was so heavily criticized for the fact that Metropolis just gets pretty much flattened, and there's inevitably must have been thousands and thousands of deaths, and you don't really see any of it, and none of it's really addressed. And that's such a weird thing in a movie like that, especially with a character like Superman, who's supposed to be for saving all these people. On the other side, you have Avengers, where there was so much emphasis on saving people and getting people to safety. Captain America, despite the fact that he can't fly, was a better Superman than Superman's been in the last movie. And so I think that was really great, because it adds sort of a gravity to all of the collateral damage happening. And it reminds you that they're superheroes. They're supposed to be saving the world. And that involves reminding you that there's a world that needs saving. And, not just these empty cities where buildings are getting completely destroyed. And I think lastly, the last part I want to touch upon is I'm really excited for the next Avengers, like I said in the short version at the beginning. And I think it's because rather than having an entire trilogy with the core Avengers, maybe some of them will come back, it feels like they're changing the guard for the next one, and I'm super excited for that. I'm a huge fan of War Machine. I thought Falcon was really cool. I'm really enjoying Scarlet Witch, and now you've got the Vision, and so having them together and having them as like the new Avengers, I think is going to be great. I think typically you would have seen a trilogy for something like this sort of transition to happen, but because so many of these Marvel characters have been in so many other movies, I think we're kind of done with them. And like I said, going into it, I was expecting to be burned out. And I think had they set up the next movie to be the same old gang again, I probably would have been burned out, and I would have been ready to go, you know what, I don't need any more Avengers. But because now I know that the next set of Avengers is going to be a whole new group that we don't have to go through their origin stories. We know Scarlet Witch's origin stories and Visions, and we know Falcon, and we know the War Machine, and so we get to just jump right into these characters who we all know to some extent, and just getting into how they work as a team dynamic. And so that's going to be really excited, and I'm sure we'll see some of the old group come back just for the whole Civil War thing. So it really left me psyched for the movie. So overall, I really enjoyed it. A lot more than I was expecting to. Made me excited for more Marvel movies. I was a little disappointed. I know they said there wasn't going to be any, but like in the back of my mind, I was just hoping that they threw together a last second sting after the credits with Spider-Man, but I guess that was too much to ask. But whatever, that's like a super minor thing. Overall, I think it was a great movie. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you haven't checked it out, I suggest you go check out The Avengers Age of Ultron. It was a lot of fun. Definitely a movie that warrants seeing on the big screen. So let me know what you thought about it. Please, if you're going to talk about the movie in the comments below, try and keep it spoiler free, at least for a couple of weeks. And then maybe, you know, when June rolls around, I think at that point it's safe to start talking spoilers. But yeah, let me know what you thought about the movie as vaguely as possible for everyone who hasn't seen it. Or you can let me know directly on Twitter. I'm @RobPlays. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great weekend, and I hope to see you next time. Bye, everyone.